Hi, I'm Nick Harcourt. Welcome to Guitar Center Sessions. We're here in the Vintage Room at Guitar Center in Hollywood. Please welcome our guests, Bad Religion.
The song is called American Jesus.
I'm Nick Harcourt. We're here with Greg and Brett from Bad Religion. First of all, thanks for doing the show, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Great place.
I want to talk a little bit about the history of the band, so why not start at the beginning? Tell us about the origins of Bad Religion.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's quite a number of years ago. I have to jog my memory. But we started out when we were in high school together. Brett and I met each other through a mutual friend. And pretty much we had a similar kind of interest in early punk rock and science fiction and science, and we were kind of nerds that didn't really fit in with the rest of the kids at our school.
Where'd you go to school?
Not far from here, in a place called Woodland Hills, California.
Know it well?
In the San Fernando Valley. A place called El Camino Real High School.
And what were you guys listening to at that time? What did you bond on?
Speaking for myself, my favorites at the time were some groups from New York and England, the Ramones, the Buzzcocks, and the Sex Pistols. And I was just discovering local LA hardcore, like the Germs and the Circle Jerks. And I also was a big fan of some early new wave too, like Devo and B-52s and that sort of stuff.
What was the LA punk scene like at that time?
It was an interesting time because the LA punk scene was really full of kind of artsy. It had a lot of different factions, I would say, that weren't they weren't fighting factions. They were pretty open to allowing each other to coexist. It was a pretty peaceful time, but you would find people who were really into like art music, sort of trying to emulate the art scene of New York City. And you'd have people who were into kind of the grungier side of punk. And you know, the early shows that we went to, on any given night, you could find at a place like the Hong Kong Cafe, for instance, you could find, you know, a rockabilly band playing alongside a synthesizer band, playing alongside a hardcore punk band. It was pretty interesting, and everyone was accepted.
When we got into punk rock, it had already been going for 3 years. You know, we got into it in like roughly 79, or
That's when we met,
yeah,
to go to
80.
the Ramones concert.
So it was brand new, but it had been going a little bit. And so in LA, you had groups like X and the Weirdos and the Dickies, and they were from that art crowd, you know, art school crowd. It had more of a New York vibe to it. Although X is fairly uniquely Los Angeles, but still they came from that early punk scene where it was more of a, you know, it had more of a rock and roll influence, it felt like, and more of an art school influence. And Bad Religion came up with a new wave of, I don't mean new wave in the sense of new wave, but in a new crop of bands from the beaches and the suburbs, and we called ourselves hardcore. And some of our contemporaries were the Adolescents, and you know, China White and Social Distortion, and what are some others, Greg?
TSOL.
Yeah, TSOL, of course.
So you guys were listening to this music, and I'm guessing you were coming across from the Valley and seeing some of it as well.
Yeah, and we were regarded sort of as the young thugs who weren't the real punk rock in a way.
Because why?
Right. Because
I was never considered a thug, but thugs
But
did.
you were lumped in with them because you wore a leather jacket and boots, and those other bands didn't do that stuff as much.
Yeah, you're right.
We were in that crowd.
I think it's a good point that we perceived ourselves as being shunned by the established, particularly in Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know, we were coming from, you guys lived 15 miles away over in the valley, you guys are losers. But the real reason that they didn't like us, I think, is because we didn't have, even though Brett and I did bond over artistic similarities, and we believed very strongly in having an artistic, at least an artistic sentiment in our songwriting, we were more, like you said, brutish, perhaps. But we didn't subscribe to the art scene. We didn't subscribe to the music scene as it existed, I think, at that time.
Yeah, there was a really a unique culture with unique rules and unique norms and unique dress and everything that was coming up. And it was, Black Flag are the band that bridged the gap between the old and the new because they formed so early. And that was sort of the most established LA hardcore band. And they and the Germs bridged the gap between hardcore and the old school sort of, you know, New York Dolls, LA Screamers, Weirdos type scene. But you know, just for example, that, you know, the punk rock scene that we came up in had a totally different style of dancing. Just for example.
Well, what was the difference?
Could you demonstrate it for us?
Yes, please.
I'd be happy to demonstrate right now. This is in 3D, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, just kidding. That's never going to happen. But
It's characterized by the Circle Jerks logo, which is a guy slam dancing. You know, the
yeah. So it's what people commonly call moshing now, but it was started here in LA. We used to call it slamming, and
I still call it slam dancing.
It sounds like there were a lot of different movements within one movement then. I mean, you talk about punk, I guess, as an attitude or as a philosophy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got these very different branches of punk happening at the same time.
Definitely.
How did you guys decide what your version of punk rock was going to be?
Well, it was I don't know that we ever really thought it out, but it came as an extension of the bands that we were going to see in the scene we were in. So we were hanging out with other punk rockers, and we were going to shows by groups like TSOL and the Adolescents and the Crowd and the Gears. And there was a very vibrant, very intense, very close-knit punk scene in LA. Literally, if you were driving down the street and you saw another punk,
You would know him.
the chances are you knew him. You know, and if you didn't know him, you actually made a point to find out who that new punk was and get to, you know, and find it, you know, and then, because it was really that small and close-knit. Let me give you an example. Back then, to be punk was a huge commitment. I mean, we took a lot of flack. You know, to put it in perspective, in 1979 in Los Angeles, you know, the tough guys and the cool guys had long hairs and mustaches. They looked like Marlboro. They looked like Tom Selleck or something. Do you know what I mean? And so, like, for us to cut our hair and go to school in combat boots, I mean, we might as well just have painted victim on our foreheads.
So were you getting it at school? Were you getting it at
Hell
home?
yeah.
Like, were you getting it everywhere?
Everywhere. I mean, I would go to the park with my girlfriend and you know, have a bunch of guys like threaten to beat the crap out of me.
Yeah, guys would drive by in their little pickup trucks, you know, and
They'd stop the car just to beat you up.
And they would always remind you, you know, punk sucks. Like they always had to, even if they weren't gonna beat you up, they'd just tell you how lame you were.
Did that solidify the attitude though even more?
Yes, it solidified the attitude and it solidified the community. You know, that our commitment to each other and our commitment to what we were doing. So I think, you know, when we wrote songs, you know, it was, we wanted to be as punk as we could be, you know.
Stop them from shivering away. On the bright sidewalk, simmering asphalt somewhere, summer day. No one keeps. There's something more than friends. Navigating a sprawl without end. Did you ever want to take bad advice? Did you ever want to go and take it twice? Do you remember when the world began to put up big stone fence? Right, you are my friend. So what's wrong with them? There go the runaway kids, singing whoa, 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 singing whoa, 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 yeah, whoa, 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 and they call it the runaway kids. The kids today are gone away, petitioning the dust, with no one to look up to, because they're looking up to us. Just misfit melancholy dreads, outlost in the mall, wanderers to nowhere at all. Did you ever wanna take bad advice? Did you ever wanna go and take it twice? Do you remember when the world began to put up a big stone fence? Right, you are my friend. So what's wrong with them? They go the wrong way, singing whoa, 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 yeah, whoa, 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 singing whoa, 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 and they call them the wrong way kids. Thank you.
Your songs have always been catchy.
We did have this idea that we need to write good songs, because no matter how cool these other bands are that we look up to, we'll never be that cool. Those guys are way cooler than us, and I never felt like I wanted to compete on that level. So we did have this idea that our songs had to be good, and they had to be infused with some, richness of ideas. And I think from the get-go on our first album, you can actually see that we were trying at least to do that. We also cared a lot about harmonies and melodies, and even on the first record, we put harmony in there. But Brett's right, I didn't want to deliver it in a sappy kind of sentimental way. I wanted it to have an edge. The melody had to be edgy and kind of unique. And we're lucky, I guess, that my voice, it was never perceived as a beautiful melodic voice. It always had some kind of an edge to it. But melody was important to us, I think.
Well, it's interesting you talk about melody and you talk about harmonies, things that you perhaps wouldn't normally associate with punk rock. What else were you listening to?
Right. I grew up listening to the Beatles and the Beach Boys, and everything else too. In AM radio in L.A. Because that's when you're a kid, you listen to your mom puts on AM radio, and so all those bubblegum hits from the late '60s, and then I sort of took a left turn in my listening, because the way to be avant-garde in your listening in the '70s prior to punk, and if you didn't want to listen to disco, was to listen to prog. So I used to listen to Yes and Gentle Giant and Emerson, Lake and Palmer,
all
and
those
King
British
Crimson
synthesizer bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it was, but for a brief period, so because that was sort of like, that was anti-establishment, that was the avant-garde. And Greg listened to that stuff too, so that's something else we had in common. And when I discovered the Buzzcocks and the Ramones, I could hear all that melody and all that harmony in there. It wasn't as explicit, but it was definitely implicit in that music. And then the great West Coast hardcore band, the Adolescents, came along, and when I discovered them, I knew that's what I wanted to do, was to have the intensity and angst of punk rock, but with the sort of the catchiness of those big sort of West Coast harmonies.
Let's talk about ideas. You guys bonded on ideas. It was always going to be a part of Bad Religion's music. Can you talk about that a little bit? You talked about science fiction, philosophy. What were the ideas that motivated you lyrically?
Uh-huh.
Well, I think one thing that's motivated me to this day is how can you be, it's what we were just touching on, what is an acceptable or a intellectually satisfying way to go against the grain? What is a way that you can push a genre or a stream of consciousness, a collective social stream of consciousness forward without being reactionary? That's really interesting stuff, and that's something I think we recognized at a very young age, and we tried to put it into songs like Against the Grain and a song called Change of Ideas. I mean, our song catalog is just full of those kind of songs.
What it comes down to is, there are a number of great philosophical questions that really have no answer. And what happens is when you're a teenager, you think about all that stuff and you debate that stuff with interest, and then you're supposed to forget about all that stuff when you grow up. But those questions are what inspired us to write songs. I mean, we write songs about, what separates man from the animals? Is there free will? Is there an immortal soul? What's the purpose of a government? All these sort of interesting philosophical questions. I still find them interesting.
Well, are they the same questions today?
The exact same questions.
They're the same,
there's no.
And the thing, sorry to interrupt, but when you touched on something about when you're young, I think it's natural. It's a natural part of intellectual development. It's part of childhood development to ask these very basic questions.
The big questions.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you're a teenager, you do it because you think there's an answer. That's what motivates you. as you study it more deeply, some people give up and they say, screw it, there's no answer, I'm moving in, I'm gonna go sell stocks or something, you know, but other people like Brett and myself say, it's the pleasure in life is to continue looking for an answer. Even though we recognize if it doesn't have an answer, it doesn't matter, because it's actually part of human history since time immemorial that these questions have been asked, and it's our duty to continue to provoke them and provoke people to think about them. So, and sometimes you might surprise yourself and there might be an answer to some of them.
And this song is called Sorrow. Father, can you hear me? How have I let you down? I curse the day that I was born, and all the sorrow in this world. Gonna take you to the hurting ground, where all good men are trampled down, just to settle the bet that could not be won between a prideful father and his son. Will you guide me now, for I can't see a reason for the suffering and this long misery? What if everything's all good, upright and strong? Well, then I do imagine there will be, and there will be, and there will be sorrow no more. When all soldiers lay their weapons down, or when all kings and queens relinquish the crowns, or when the only true Messiah rescues us from ourselves, it's easy to imagine there will be, and there will be, and there will be sorrow no more, no more. There will be, and there will be, and there will be sorrow no more. Yeah, there will be, and there will be, and there will be sorrow no more, no more.
What's your approach to punk rock guitar? I mean, is there a particular way that you look at the way you play?
My approach is economy. I try to say as much as I can with as little as possible. Somebody who I look up to and that I can never attain his greatness, but who's my hero among guitar players is Mike Campbell from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. He plays with great economy. He doesn't have to because he's got the chops. But when he plays a solo or a rhythm part or what have you, it always suits the song just perfectly, and it's not doesn't necessarily draw attention to itself. It accompanies the vocal, which I believe is the focal point of a song.
Can you take us through the process of writing a Bad Religion song?
A little bit. Brett and I think are similar in one thing. We always carry a little lyric notebook around, jot down a lot of ideas. You know, but sometimes a song starts from a chord progression, right? I mean,
Usually.
And Brett's talked a lot about how he buys a new guitar and all of a sudden he's got a chord progression before he even has an idea of a lyric.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, Greg and I demo our songs usually on our own. So Greg has a little demo studio and so do I. So usually when Greg presents his songs to me, they're pretty well worked out and they're recorded on his at his home studio with you know, drums, bass, guitars, backgrounds, everything. And I usually get all that together also on my songs, and then we start sending each other songs. You know, usually when we have a few that we think are good, we present them to each other, and that lets us know sort of what the other guy's thinking and where the new record might be heading. Of course, my songs have my crappy vocals on them. I can't stand listening to them that way. So as soon as I can get Greg over to my house, I have him sing on my demos.
It's interesting to think of you guys starting off songs on an acoustic guitar, because then when you get to play them on stage, you've got Gibson guitars,
Yeah.
Marshall amps,
Yeah.
and you use a lot of equipment that is associated with heavy rock bands.
Yeah.
Is there any particular reason?
Yes. I mean, because we could easily start with a Marshall and an electric guitar, but the problem is that everything sounds really cool when you play it through a Marshall with an electric guitar, right? So you can start writing that way, and you can be very impressed with volume, and you don't really know what you have. If your song sounds good to you on that acoustic, then when you electrify it, man, it's really cool, you know?
And a lot of it
in other words, it just keeps getting bigger. If you start it with the acoustic, and it's enough to get you excited, then once you plug it in, it explodes.
Here's a song from about 1990. Goes back many, many years. Keep it up. Do your little. That's an A minor, by the way. Like a rock, like a planet, like a atom bomb, I'll remain unperturbed by the joy and the madness I encounter everywhere I turn. I've seen it all along, in the books and magazines, like a twitch before dying, like a pornographic scene. There's a fire behind the window, that's an ugly laughing man, like a hummingbird in silence, like the blood on my door. It's the generator. Like the bone under my skin, like cactus in a photograph, like paper in the wind. There's a hammer by the window, there's a knife on the floor, like termites in darkness, like the blood on my lawn. It's the generator. the blood on my door. Wash me clean and I will run until I reach the shore. Until the sound of the shoreline. Let's go. Watch it. Like a rock. Here's a new song called Resist Stance. The seeds of rebellion lay outside your front door. You nursed every one of them, the floor into I'll be one more. And your revolution isn't what's in store. How can you care anymore? It's a dangerous sap, conscientious shift. The spirit of resistance gotta hold your grip. Less this dangerous all makes you quickly devolve to a fundamental ass. Yeah. You're an undone, think you're pinned to the wall. She clings on conviction like the fireman in Morning Star. Never been on the field one outside. That's the ticket for a ride. It's a dangerous act. Conscientious shit. The spirit of resistance. Gotta hold your grip. And it does not evade it. It's quickly conveyed as belligerent. Shake it. It's a dangerous sound, conscientious shout. Spirit of resistance, gotta hold your grip, and the burn won't be kind. They're desperate for a viable alternative. Take a stand, resist, stand, take a stand. Resist, stand, take a stand. Resist, stand, take a stand. Resist, stand.
How do you manage to keep it going for 30 years? I mean, there's not a lot of bands can do that in any genre of music.
First of all, you don't talk about it as much, how long you've been around. So that when you do start to tally it, it's a surprise.
Yeah.
I don't think we consciously, it's almost like asking someone, hey, you just turned 30 years old. How in the hell did you get here? They don't really know. It's a development. And we've always looked at Bad Religion as a development. It's a place for us to exercise our creativity. And there's a heck of a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to keep it, keep the music alive, not just by our great record label, Epitaph, but also by the thousands of smaller communities of fans in punk that keep it alive. So a lot of it's not our doing. It's the fact that punk has remained viable and Bad Religion has a place in that history, and we continue to try and create new work.
That, if I can add one thing to that, and I think that's what's key, is that for whatever reason, and I've been in and out of the band a couple times briefly, but the Bad Religion has been very prolific. And I think that's really sustained them. They're not like some groups who made a couple records and rested on their laurels and then started putting out a record every 5 or 6 years or something. I mean, we have 15 albums. We've consistently tried to put out good records.
Well, let's talk about the label, because you started Epitaph Records, and obviously the band has done the major label and the independent label. I want to talk about Epitaph in a minute, but let's talk about the difference between working for the man, so to speak, being on a major label.
Me? Oh, you mean the major label.
He's the man.
That's a joke.
You're the man today.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different, obviously, than being on a major label.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
As someone who's experienced the back and forth, I can say that oftentimes the man is perceived to be a lot more sinister than the man actually is. In other words, we didn't go to a major label and all of a sudden we had some guy over our heads telling us how to make a record. In fact, when we got signed to Atlantic Records, everybody across the board said, "You guys have 10 records or 8 records out. How are we we're not gonna tell you how to make a record." So that was my biggest fear, of course, was signing to a major and then losing all control. Didn't happen that way. And, I would say one of the great things that did come of that, and this is a historical perspective, now I do believe that Epitaph is the best label out there, period. And I think that Bad Religion couldn't do better anywhere else, and we don't want to. It feels like a family, feels like it's where we should be, and everything that Epitaph couldn't do back then, they can do now. But one of those things in 1994 was, it was early 93 really, that the distribution was a lot more established in the major world. So we were able to play places that we couldn't play back then, because our records showed up there, like Australia, like South America. Now, the time we left Epitaph to the time we came back, Epitaph grew into a much more important label. And we came back in 2001, and Epitaph could do everything that any major could do.
So you're running a record label, you're a professor. I mean, how do you balance that?
I think you just stumbled on one of the keys to longevity of the band, and that is
doing other things?
Doing other things. We've always,
yeah.
When this band is not together, we don't see a lot of each other. We have separate duties, separate activities, and personally, I've chosen duties and activities that I think inspire me to write more music. And they're challenges, they're interesting challenges, and I take them on with as much gusto as I do songwriting. And I find myself missing songwriting when I spend too much time in academia, too much time writing books. It makes me want to go back and write songs, and that has fueled me all this time. I think Brett probably misses songwriting when he's
I'll totally
negotiating
do that, yeah.
with bands.
Yeah, I think being in the world in some other capacity tends to help you avoid that old trap that a lot of bands get into, which is they don't know anything other than being a band. And so if that's all you have to write about, then it's sort of like the snake eating its tail.
And I will say something about that we have never done. I hate saying never because maybe someday we'll be inspired to, but I hope not, because we haven't had to rely on writing a song about being on the road, right? It's exactly what he was just talking about.
Yeah.
When a band is out of things to write about, they write about touring, life on the road.
Nothing against all our friends who
No, and there's some good songs
road.
about it, but it is really like, it's not that compelling.
Yeah.
It's not, to me, that's not a very compelling song, hearing about how tough it is out there.
I think it's part of the reason
on the
why,
road.
first and second records are always the best. Because then the band blows up and they're only, all of a sudden they don't have any real life experience to draw from.
Yeah, they've lost touch with any other real life experience.
We'd like to do a song now called 21st Century Digital Boy. I can't believe it. My daddy's a lazy little bastard. I let you on my mama's on ballot. So it affect you all. The life of me is diarrhea. I can't explain it. The things you're saying to me. It's going yeah, 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 yeah. Oh yeah. 'Cause I'm a 21st century digital boy. I don't know how to read, but I got a lot of toys. My daddy's a lazy little bastard. Never left you for my mom is on ballot. So it affect you all. The life of me is diarrhea. Tried to tell you about no control, but now I really don't know. But then you told me how bad you had to suffer. Is this really all you had to offer? Like I say. Cause I'm a 21st century digital boy. I don't know how to read, I got a lot of toys. My daddy's a lazy little man. Never let you on my mama's on battery. So it affect you all care. For iron claw, precision, skins for more. Innocence raped when it come by. The quick little boy, I really need. In life of mystery. Thank you.
Well, let's talk about success. Let's talk about what happened on those first couple of records, because all of a sudden you're moving from the Valley into touring the world in a very successful band. Were there any dark days?
It wasn't really until 1991, that's when we started to really realize we could get pretty big now. And we did go out on a lot of touring. And you know, the only darkness I can state is the darkness I recognize now, but at the time it seemed great. And it, you know, it took a lot of time away from our, we just became family men. And of course we just bailed out on our families, and that was probably harder than we acknowledged it to be back then. That was my darkest story, but
Yeah.
Brett had some other troubles.
Yeah, you know, I've had my struggles over the years with things and with various things, and it's been fairly well publicized. I don't know if I want to talk about them all on TV, but there was a period of time in the mid-'90s where Greg and I parted ways. I actually left the band, and I went into a dark period in my life there, where you could describe them quite easily as rock and roll excesses. You know, I don't want to go into it too deeply, but I really lost the plot for some time, and you know, wound up in LA County Jail, and had a very rough patch, you know. But I have a lot of people who love me in my life, and I didn't spend much time in jail. But I'm just describing. I just want to let you know how low I got, you know.
How did this impact the band?
I went into protective mode, and I said, okay, he's off on his journey. We've still got this band that we need to keep viable. And you know, we didn't have hardly any communication, and I just did the best I could and tried to keep everything on path. So I ended up writing 4 records pretty much by myself. And I'm very happy with the results of about half of those records. I mean, each record, my usual contribution is about half of the songs. And on those records, half of those records are really I'm very proud of those accomplishments. But it was a struggle. It was like running a car without the full capacity of all the cylinders. And I could only realize that when Brett came back into the band. We started talking around the year 2000 about writing together again. And when we started having those conversations, it's like I wasn't even angry that he was gone. I just looked ahead and looked forward to how great it was going to be to have all the cylinders firing again. And I think it came out really well in the process of Belief.
So Brett, do you think coming back was part of perhaps what you needed to do to actually come back and work with the band again?
I love writing music. I love making records. And I couldn't possibly do it without Greg. And we're a band. Our writing together with him singing it, that's Bad Religion to me, And who I am isn't just a music executive. I like business, and it's real fun for me, and I look forward to going to work every day. And I love what I do at work, when I can sign a band and help them, kind of achieve their dreams and get popular from obscurity. That's a great feeling.
Can you expand on that a little bit, talking to new bands? When you come across a new band, a young band, what is it that excites you? What is it that makes you want to work with them, either as a producer or as a label executive that you want to release their music?
I think that's the thing about music. It connects all of us, and no one really even knows why. But you can hear a song, and it can just, it can just make you well up with emotion, a particular melody with a particular beat, with a particular lyric. And you can play it for 1,000 different people, and it can make them feel the same way, And that's what connects us, We're really, in a sense, we're really all one person anyway, And music makes you more aware of that than any other art form. So, I look for that sort of universality, that thing where it gets me excited, and I think it will for other people too.
It's very hard to define what gets you about something, at least for me. But if you're going through a pile of demos, what is it about something that will excite you as opposed to the other 10 or 20 songs that you listen to that you're like, no?
Greatness. I'm looking for greatness, It's like, and I can't tell you what makes one piece of music great and another not great. But when I hear it, I feel it. And I know that I'm not special. That if I feel that, other people feel it too. And that's what I listen to. That's what I wait for. And the trick is, though, to sort of turn off your head. To turn off your being judgmental. And go like, well, what will people think if I like that? Or is that fashionable right now?
Worrying about what somebody else is going to think.
Yeah, that's the tough part. To not like it because you're competitive with it, or or to not like it because it's not cool to like it.
Can you think of anything that you have perhaps passed on as a label guy?
Yeah, a lot of things.
Because of those judgments?
Yeah. Well, this is in '85, and I had 2 records that I had an opportunity to sign. One was a band called Thelonious Monster, and they were all friends of mine, and they were all friends with the coolest guys in town, and they had sort of a punk edge, but they sort of sounded like the Replacements, and I could have signed them. Or I also had this record by this group called Jane's Addiction, which was like, it sounded like more like hippie rock to me. It was kind of jammy, kind of Zeppelin-y. And I thought, well, that's not cool at all, that's not very punk. No one will like that if it comes out on Epitaph, So, of course, I signed Thelonious Monster instead of Jane's Addiction. Of course, their first record sold 1 million copies. And Thelonious Monster went to #1 on the college radio charts. And it was critically well received. So my cool factor was preserved. But
What did you learn from that experience?
It taught me how to be a music professional, which is, and it's different from being a fan. So I'm not saying that anyone who just wants to be a fan, you can enjoy being judgmental then, Kids who like the Black Keys, they just can't like Katy Perry too, you know? Or maybe they can, but if you want to be judgmental about one or the other, feel free. But if you want to be a music professional, you have to try to be less judgmental and hear what's great in the music. You know, hear what, even if it's not for you, hear what others might hear in it.
Here's a song called Infected. Let's talk about no one. Please talk about no one. Someone, anyone. You and me have our disease. You affect me. You infect me. I'm afflicted. You're addicted. You and me. You and me. I'm on the edge. Till it gets a wall. So distracted, but I'm distracted. It's my confession. You learned your lesson. Stop me before I do it again. Let's talk about nothing. Let's talk about nothing. Let's talk about no one. Please talk about no one. Someone, anyone. You and me have a disease. You affect me. You infect me. I'm afflicted. You're addicted. You and me. You and me. You're clear as a heavy. They couldn't wanna chill you. Just like the ocean, but I'm running out. We can't work it out. Now I'm running out. Don't be mad about it, baby.
Greg, your solo work conjures up images of people like Woody Guthrie. Do you see him as a part of the punk lineage or artists like him, people from that time?
What I perceive about Woody Guthrie is more, maybe relates more to the artistic element of a great sentiment, an idea that's distilled down to a universal lyric or melody that everyone can sing from now till time forever. And that's what Woody Guthrie, I think, brought to music. And in a sense, that goes beyond the genre of punk. That goes to just the big, grand category of music. And when it's my goal to be able to transcend, even though I'm very passionate about punk and how important it is to drive forward new ideas and to provoke people into rethinking what they're comfortable with. I'm passionate about that. My real goal is just to create music and to be able to say something in a way that is going to be remembered forever. That goes way beyond any genre, and that's what Woody Guthrie achieved. And I think you can do it with an acoustic guitar and a voice.
Fair enough. Well, I want to thank you guys for talking to us, Brett and Greg from Bad Religion. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you soon.